Hello and good evening. On Thursday night, we're having a special edition of Grid Tonight to report on major breaking news, and we invite all viewers to comment with their opinions. Seven-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton is going to Scuderia Ferrari in 2025, leaving Mercedes at the end of the year. This means that for the first time in his F1 career, he will not race with a Mercedes engine. I'm Kobe Lameth, and with me today, Ben Snyder from LastCar.info, Isha Zim from Racing with Isha, and Joshua Birch from Joshua Birch Motorsports. What a morning surprise that sent shockwaves across the motorsports world. It's been a busy week of news, with Formula One denying Andretti Global a spot in the grid. Brody Kostecki's supercar future is up in the air, and now Lewis Hamilton is leaving Mercedes for Ferrari. And starting with you, Isha, what was your initial response to the big news that broke this morning?
Oh, Kobe, I was extremely shocked. I mean, the situation at my house was it was 8 a.m. I was asleep. I wake up and I see texts from all of you guys. And I just think it's, we're talking about another episode or something. I open it up and I see Hamilton to Ferrari. And it was insane. I jump out of bed, get ready. I go to school. And the whole time while I was in college and at work, the only thing on my mind was Hamilton going to Ferrari. And at first I was hoping that, it's just rumors, nothing's confirmed yet. And then slowly the news came out that it's been confirmed, and then we saw the statement from Mercedes, from Ferrari, and then from Carlos Sainz. And just the whole time, I've been really, really shocked. I'm excited that we're talking about it now because it's a really, really hot topic right now, and I'm just yeah. I guess the biggest word to describe it is shock.
Exactly the same for me, Isha, and it was literally 10 o'clock here in the UK in the morning. I was having a lie-in because I was up until 2 a.m. waiting for MotoGP that never came on. You might remember I said it last night on the Grid Tonight show. So just catching up on sleep from Daytona. And my phone is usually on Do Not Disturb, but all the F1 and all the journalists that we speak to, they're all on the bypass in case something like this happens. I woke up to my phone practically ringing. It was getting so many notifications. I thought, what is going on? So I pick it up, and all I read is Hamilton. And I was like, oh, is he retired? And I'm half asleep scrolling through this. Ferrari, no news official yet. I was like, what on earth is this? I literally jump up out of bed, run downstairs, and just say, Hamilton, he's Ferrari. I barely came my words out. He's going to Ferrari. And then I got pointed out I was just in boxers, so that was a sign. But Hamilton, Ferrari, and remember, this is my family's motorsport mad. They're all in the commentary box with me. My dad, Ian Birch, he could not believe it. It took him a while to process it. I think it did me. Megan had woken up. She'd already been working on some university work, much like you, Isha. She was going like, no, what? No. And then Mum wasn't at the house, so we gave her a text, and she was like, no. And older brother was like, doesn't really follow Formula One anymore since I, sort of wrecked it for him because that was 24/7 with it. He was going like, really? Hamilton, Ferrari? I didn't think that. So, and then I've had phone calls throughout the day from friends and I didn't even know watch Formula One. Was like, is it true? What's going on here? I've had conversations with people I haven't spoken to in years about it as well. People that I've known for 15 years, I didn't know watched Formula One, have texted me saying about it all. It has been the weirdest day. I do not remember anything like this in the history of the sport that since I've been covering it. We've had Senna announcing he's leaving to go to Williams. We've had Rosberg shock retirements, but I don't think we've ever had this where it's come completely out the blue that he's going. We'll get into it later on the script that we've had rumours over the years that he's going to go to Ferrari, but that's always been quickly nullified. To have it confirmed, in the space of less than 12 hours, it's like today's just been a hit on fast forward. So I think everyone's a little jumpy. I've had too much coffee to try and keep awake of it all. I've filmed a podcast with our own Matt White and Jess Ball as well. And yeah, we've just all been processing the news, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And me personally, I'm mixed. I think it could be good, it could be bad, and it's what this sport does best. It throws us curveballs. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to testing and talking about it some more.
Well, I hate to say it, but my first thought was you better get your 8th this year because I don't see it. I mean, you guys know how I feel about. I mean, I'm disappointed because I'm like I don't know that I can make fun of Ferrari anymore because I can't disrespect a 7-time world champion like that. But this is so shocking to me because this is, keep in mind, a team that has not won anything in terms of championships since 2008, hasn't won a driver since 2007. And I think, you can flashback to about a decade ago when Lewis did this, leaving McLaren to go to Mercedes. Everybody was wondering what he was doing there. Obviously, that worked out. Within the next 8 years, he had 6 more championships to go with his one that he had with McLaren. But I guess the two questions that I have are, why not now? Why wait a year? If you clearly, the only reason he's still doing this, I think, is to get that 8th world championship. I remember the first year I really watched Formula One full time. I think 2015, he went on CBS's 60 Minutes and said, I want to stop when I'm 37. I'll probably go do something else. So he just turned 39. So he's still here chasing that 8th championship to break Michael Schumacher's record. I think that's the main thing that's keeping him going and has kept him energized and kept him fired up, wanting to do that. Clearly, if he's willing to leave Mercedes, he must see something within the team that makes him think, the grass might be greener somewhere else in the paddock. So that leads to the second question, why Ferrari? Because I feel like there's only one team, really, if the last few years are any indication, there's one team that Lewis could go to that would grant him the opportunity to win a championship. It has red in the name, but it's not the team whose car is painted red. Of course, I'm talking about Red Bull. And you thought the internet broke today. Can you imagine if Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton were going to be teammates in 2025? I don't know if Twitter or X, could handle that. So I'm trying to process all of this like you all are. I'm sure it hasn't really fully hit us yet, and it probably won't for a while, because we do have one more full season of him in the Mercedes to look forward to, and we'll see how things go over there. I have a feeling it's probably just going to be another season of the Max Verstappen show with Red Bull. But if anybody could shock us and deliver something worth talking about that would go down in Formula One history and create something successful out of a move like this, it's certainly Sir Lewis Hamilton.
If I could just hop in, if you remember, we were talking about this with Matt and Jess earlier on. We actually did have Christian Horner in Abu Dhabi come out and say, well, Lewis and me, we've had a conversation. We've had a discussion. He wanted to join our team. And then it quickly got nullified and shut down in the media by Lewis and everything. But I'm now genuinely starting to think, did he have a conversation with Christian about joining Red Bull as early as 2024 or 2025? And I think it went downhill as soon as Christian sort of opened it up, because instead of a quiet little, off the record chat, Christian blew it up and just said, look, we've had a talk. God knows if it's going anywhere, but he's not happy at Mercedes. So that did come out in Abu Dhabi. And even throughout last year, back in Monaco and all that lot, we were hearing rumours that Hamilton was leaving Mercedes for Ferrari. And then throughout the year, we had Hamilton openly criticising Mercedes. And it's just sort of been like a slow burn that it's been one of the most weird dot to dots we've ever had. And it just keeps going in different places. We can't work it out.
Yeah, well, but to your point, Josh, those are my two main things that I'm wondering coming from this news. Why not Red Bull? Because, with no disrespect to Checo Perez, I have a feeling if Christian Horner had the opportunity to pair Lewis Hamilton alongside Max Verstappen, I think that's a no-brainer. And if that's the case, then why have this, as we're about to talk about, I think, lame duck year, if you will, where you're leaving the team, that you think, at least, that's why you're leaving, that you have a better chance of winning a championship elsewhere. Why continue to see out 2024 instead of trying to ask for a contract buyout a year early so that you can get a head start on that new journey? Those are my two questions that I still have to be asking myself here.
Yeah, Ben, those are some excellent points. And before we move on to our next point of this discussion, we have some comments in the chat room. Comment there from Astro Police said that you were at work and you got 3 phone calls and could not believe it when you finally answered. Yeah, it was very surprising news to all of that. Adam Limmery says that he was at his house when he heard the news. Yeah, and I was just getting ready for my work day when I heard the news. So it was just like trying to get ready for work, trying to process this. To be honest, I couldn't really focus on my job today because there was just so much going on in the world of Formula One. And Astro Police also said that this is beginning to become a regular thing for the grid team. And if we keep having breaking news story like this, it might become the Grid Nightly News with Lester Holt or something like that. And Adam says he's still shocked after this news. Yeah, I think we're gonna be shocked for days, because this is such a monumental news day, not just for Formula One, but for the world of motorsports. This has to be one of the biggest silly season stories in motorsports in recent memory, because I can't remember a time that something just came out of the blue like this, and it all happened so fast in a matter of hours. Never in a million years that I think I'd see Lewis Hamilton, in red driving for Ferrari. This is something I expect to see, on the Formula One video game, when they'd be swapping seats like that. And Ben, you want to add something?
So Kobe, are you ready to one up Ferrari and announce that Lester Holt is coming to the Grid Network? Is that what did you just leak the news there?
No, I didn't leak any news. I guess I'll try to be Lester Holt, although I'll never be Lester Holt. But it's just really crazy with all these news stories. But Astro Police might be on to something. Whenever we get breaking news and it's of this magnitude, expect Grid Network to organize a special stream so we come on the air so you can hear what we have to say about this big story. And looking at the timeline of how all this came about, the news broke from Jonathan Noble at motorsport.com this morning that a deal was not only being worked on but could be done by the end of the week. And little did we know, by the end of the day, then BBC chief F1 writer Andrew Benson reported at 2 p.m. GMT that Mercedes was having a team meeting called by Toto Wolff and James Allison to confirm Hamilton's departure. That meeting did occur and lasted about 10 minutes, with the Mercedes staff seen arriving for the meeting and then leaving about 10 minutes later. Wolff did not attend the meeting in person because he's away on holiday. At 7 p.m. GMT, Mercedes posted on social media that Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team and Lewis Hamilton will part ways at the end of the 2024 season because Lewis decided to activate a release option in his contract that was announced last year. And then just 5 minutes later, Ferrari released a simple statement that Scuderia Ferrari's police announced that Lewis Hamilton will be joining the team in 2025 on a multi-year contract. And Ben, starting with you on this question, how big of a setback is this for Mercedes to lose Lewis Hamilton? Did the struggles of the last 2 years make the move to Ferrari seem more attractive to Lewis?
Well, I think it's certainly a setback. I mean, I remember, I think Toto Wolff probably wasn't too happy with the timing of Nico Rosberg's retirement because he was expecting Rosberg to be there, I think, through 2018. He had just actually signed a contract before the 16 season ended. And then it came out that Rosberg had the discussions with his family that if he won the championship at Abu Dhabi, he was going to retire. Obviously, if he didn't, he was going to come back and try to beat Lewis again in 2017. So the fact that he had this plan in his mind and hadn't revealed it yet until after the season ended, when Mercedes had already started planning for the new year, I think kind of threw them for a loop a little bit. Now, in the case of Lewis Hamilton here, he's given them a full year to get ready for the driver change, whoever's going to be coming into that seat in 2025. So it's not as sudden or shocking, but I think it certainly does throw a curveball Mercedes' way, and they're going to have to obviously look at some of the top candidates for that seat. And again, it might be kind of treated like a lame duck year. I know that they're going to be fired up and want to give Lewis the best possible opportunity to have success and at the very least win another race. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe Lewis hasn't won a race in the last 2 years since we had the last major regulation change, and the team themselves have only won one race with George Russell at Brazil in 2022. So it has certainly been a down couple of years for them by their standards. I know there are several teams in the back of the grid that would love to be running where Mercedes ran the last 2 seasons, but for a team that won 8 constructors championships in a row, it certainly has not lived up to those expectations that they've set for themselves. So I certainly think, again, I could understand, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, I could understand Lewis Hamilton looking at what they have over Red Bull and seeing Max Verstappen's dominance and thinking if I could get in an equal car with Max and go head-to-head with him, maybe I could win the 8th world championship. But again, Ferrari is a team that has not won a championship of any kind of a sport in the last decade and a half. If anybody can bring that streak to an end, it's somebody like Lewis Hamilton. But then you think of, who's driven for this team since their last championship? You've had Fernando Alonso in there. Felipe Massa never got back to the level he was at when he was world champion for about 30 seconds. Then ironically, Lewis was the one that took it from him. Leclerc has, shown world championship potential, but has never quite been able to break through. Kimi Räikkönen came back for a second stint, couldn't quite get the job done. Then Sebastian Vettel, the 4-time consecutive world champion at Red Bull, came over to Ferrari. He wanted to emulate his hero, Michael Schumacher, and win a world championship with Ferrari. Had a couple of years where had things gone slightly differently, had they been more consistent, maybe he could have gotten the job done. Ultimately, he did not. So when you look at all the talent that team has had, it's a very, very tall order, I think, for Lewis Hamilton, particularly before the next major set of regulation changes, to come in and try to win a world championship. But again, if anybody can do it, it's a driver with his kind of resume.
Yeah, I agree with Ben. I think that it's going to be a big enough setback for Mercedes. Not only are they losing an extremely talented driver, but also one of the biggest names in Formula One. And with Lewis Hamilton, there's also an extremely big fan base that supports Mercedes because of Hamilton. And now that's going to be most likely transferred over to Ferrari. But also, I feel like Lewis Hamilton moving over to Ferrari, as Ben mentioned, we do wonder why he must have done it because is Ferrari really going to be the best option for him to get that 8th world championship that he has his eyes set on? But if you look at it from the sense that, he knows what Mercedes' plans are for the next, year and maybe for 2025 as well, and he knows that the car may not get that much better. He knows that, his chance might be with another team. So I think that when you consider that, maybe going over to Ferrari may be a better decision for him. But considering Ferrari's performance for the past few years, it is a bit surprising that if he wants to get that 8th world championship title, that Ferrari is the team that he decides to go to. But overall, I think that it is a bit of a setback for Mercedes, but, as Ben pointed out, they do have this next year to at least plan, and prepare for whoever they're going to choose to take Lewis Hamilton's spot.
I don't think it's so much to do with the fact that Ferrari haven't won a world championship in 15 odd years now. I think it's got more to do with the fact that Ferrari won a race last year. Mercedes didn't. In the past, 2 seasons, Mercedes have won a total of 1 race and 1 sprint race and have had about 3 pole positions. It is dismal. Compare that to anyone, it is not good. In the same amount of time, we've had more victories from outside of the actual field as well. So I don't know. It doesn't strike me as Mercedes were in the right concept. Lewis and George, let's be fair, were saying that this car doesn't work with the no side pods. George got it to work at Sao Paulo, and the team did get a 1-2. But they were begging the design team just to change it around for 2023. They didn't. And for the first half of the season, they were slow, they were uncompetitive. Then they suddenly decided, okay, we're going to bring side pods, but we're going to bring it to Monaco, the wrong place to do it. They got no data, and that sent them back in at Canada. And then they really got track on at Austria, then and then Silverstone. Didn't really work that well. And Hamilton came out publicly and said, look, they're just not listening to me. They're not listening to the way that the team want to go. I've said, what's wrong with the car? They've said they're not going to pay attention to me. So there was cracks there. Even in Monaco, we were hearing about rumours that Hamilton was talking with Ferrari. I don't think it was going on as early as that, because if it's been going on since May, we would have had an announcement before the end of the season. I think this has started pretty much over the winter break. Possibility from I would say the earliest that this started was just after Qatar. After Hamilton and Russell made contact, and Hamilton said it was his fault, but I know behind the scenes there would have been a lot of discussions about that. And I think he felt a little bit peeved that he got most of the blame for that when Russell he had nowhere to go because he got pinched by Max and Hamilton was on the outside. But as a team decision, I think he got a bit peeved that he wasn't, it wasn't a 50-50. It was more 60-50, 60-40 to Hamilton's fault. That didn't like him. It felt like it wasn't his team anymore. And we saw a big shift in Lewis after that, in the last couple of races, struggling as well in Abu Dhabi to, I think he finished 8th, didn't he? So really poor there. Now he's got his old manager back, and he hasn't got his support team around Mercedes anymore. Angie left. Bono's still there, but most of his engineers have left and have gone away. James Vowles, now team principal, of course, at Williams. James Allison has come back, but the car's such a mess. It's going to take a long while to go. I think Lewis has realised that they sort of sacrificed this regulation run to focus on 26. And I think in the past couple of months, he's been looking at what Ferrari have got for 26 in terms of engine development, in terms of car design, in terms of setup. I think he's gone, that's a challenge. I like that idea. And if I want to, and he's always wanted to race at Ferrari. He's always said it's never just really aligned for him. Now it has. So, right, he's taken it. But let's not deny, he's got Fred Vasseur, who's the team principal at Ferrari, who used to be his team principal in GP2 when he was at ART. They've come up the ranks together. And they are good friends. I mean, Corinne Channock in the Sky Show tonight said that in 2007, he, Lewis and Frederick were still having dinners together, and that still continues. We saw in the podium in Singapore when Sainz won. Hamilton congratulated all the Ferrari guys, and on the podium was hugging with Fred Vasseur. So there's a common bond there. There's an old friendship sort of been reignited, and I think it's very much of Lewis felt that he was no longer wanted or needed at that of Mercedes. He felt a bit pushed out by George coming in, and he's now been actively pursued by Ferrari, because as soon as they knew that he was wanting to leave, they poached him straight away and gave up conversation with Sainz. We got into Sainz a bit later on in the program. So as soon as they knew that he was available, they wanted him, and like everybody, he wants to feel like he's wanted, and it's just sort of it's not a divorce. It's sort of just a parting of the ways between him and Mercedes, and a sort of reconnection and a development into something new at Ferrari. It's sort of a bit poetic in my book. He's ending his career with Ferrari, with the man who brought him into Formula One. So it's quite poetic.
You brought up a lot of great points there, Josh. And after this season ends, it's gonna be really strange, not seeing Lewis Hamilton represent the Silver Arrows anymore, and then moving over to Scuderia Ferrari and having a Tifosi cheer for in 2025 and beyond. I'm sure the Tifosi never expected that they'd be cheering for Lewis Hamilton, when in recent memory, they haven't really been too happy to see him, especially when he wins those races and all of that. I think eventually, Mercedes is going to be able to bounce back, because right now they have George Russell who they can build around for the future, and we're going to talk about a little bit later in the program. But they have this young prospect named Andrea Kimi Antonelli, who is really, really good. And this is someone who could potentially be a Mercedes Formula One driver in the future. So while losing one of the all-time greats of the sport in Lewis Hamilton is a sad thing for Mercedes, there's still a lot for them to look forward to in the future. Maybe they can rediscover their winning ways in the next few years once we get the new regulations change. But I'm going to start with you on this next follow-up, Ben. With this been a lame duck year for Hamilton and Mercedes coming up, do you anticipate their final season together being more of a struggle than the last 2 years?
I mean, I'm not sure more than the last 2 years, because I expect this season to be more Red Bull dominance. Is probably going to be a struggle for everybody not named Max Verstappen. Maybe Checo Perez, if he can get his act together. And I see Josh.
No. Let me tell you something. It may be Perez's car, but by the time we get back to, I think, before even the European season, Danny Rick will be in that car. There's no way Perez is staying that long. Yeah, right. Honestly, Perez is there to complete a couple of races in 24 to sign off the contract, and Danny Rick's right back in there. I'm telling you that right now.
All right, we'll clip that and we'll either tag they already knew or Old Takes Exposed, depending on how it works out. But looking at the upcoming season, I think regardless, Red Bull is in the driver's seat, specifically Max Verstappen. Checo might pull out a win or two here or there, like he has the last couple of seasons. But I mean, Max is probably, I don't know if he's going to win 19 of 22 again, or 24, whatever it is now. I mean, the insane amount of races that Domenicali's added to the calendar. By the way, Domenicali, if you're watching this, we haven't forgotten about yesterday's news. I know you thought that this was going to distract everybody. We haven't forgotten. We're still upset about it. So just want to get that on the record as well. But I don't know. I mean, it is kind of a lame duck, like I mentioned earlier in the show. But I don't know that is going to be why Hamilton and Mercedes can't compete for a championship next year. I don't think they were going to compete for a championship anyway. I don't really think the distraction of him leaving at the end of the year, I think if anything, it might fire them up even more and want to try to go out on a high note and at least win a couple of races if they can't take the fight to Red Bull over the full season for a championship. So I don't expect, an 8th championship for Lewis Hamilton this year, but I don't expect anything different. And, to the point Josh was just making as well, it was only 3 points, but, kind of a technicality. They were pretty even, but Mercedes did edge Ferrari for second in the constructors last year. So for all the talk about how terrible the car was and how unhappy Hamilton and Russell were, they were able to make it work to be the best not named Red Bull last season. So Lewis Hamilton still certainly has a lot in the tank and a lot of talent to give to this sport. And it's going to be interesting to see what they can do with Mercedes in their final year together.
Yeah, I think this could go one of two ways. One, it could be a struggle. It could be a tough year for Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes if the Mercedes car, is still pretty poor, causes lots of problems. And if they're still complaining about it, it might even cause some tensions between Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff, or between him and George Russell, or just the whole Mercedes team. But the second thing that could happen is that Lewis Hamilton, knowing that he's just got to get through this year with Mercedes, and then after that he's off to Ferrari, where he may or may not have a better shot at the championship. He might not, I guess, if the season does go poorly, he might not try to make that big a deal out of it, or he might just stay calm throughout the season. But I see one of these two things happening. It could either be, I think, really, really difficult and a big struggle, or it might not be that bad at all, and, he might just hold it all in and wait until he gets to Ferrari.
I think so, and I'm trying to sort of think about the technical aspects of things as well, because you two are answering brilliantly what's going to happen, as we all know. So I'm trying to think of things that'll happen technical that could sort of kick off something, because you're going to have Lewis racing this year's Mercedes, and as Ben said earlier on, last year they were 3 points ahead of Ferrari. Admittedly, it would have been different if Sainz hadn't have had that, power unit fail in Vegas after he ran over the drain cover and the FIA not allow him a free change because it was their fault. And then he had another crash in Abu Dhabi practice street. So either way, I don't think it would have worked. But still, if he had Vegas points, it probably would have been different. But I think what the problem is we're going to see, I think, Hamilton and Mercedes start the year. Oh, this is our last year. You're going. Oh no, this can be our last first race together, our last British Grand Prix together, all that lot. It's going to be like our lasts, and then it's going to get to around about mid-season, just after the summer break, when all the technical data starts coming in for next year's car, and Lewis is going to get angry because it happened at McLaren when he announced that he was leaving. He was shut out of all the negotiations for the 2013 car. And we saw in Singapore how angry he got, throwing away Japan, all that, how annoyed he got and everything. And it's quick how relationships break down when you're, being ignored, being forced out. So Lewis has got to go through that. He's got to accept the fact that he's made the decision to go to Ferrari a year early and realize that the team are going to have to start keeping secrets from him. As the 2025 car, whatever to think about next year, will start development quite early. Probably around about June, they'll start developing it. And by the time we get to after summer break in August, September, the first things will be going into the wind tunnel. So everything will start getting developed. Lewis can't know anything about that, which means any parts that come onto the car that are designed for next year's car as well, like we see every now and then new winglets get added on that could be on next year's car in practice session, that'll all go to Russell. It would not go to Hamilton. Hamilton will have no upgrades on that car after the summer break. He'll have nothing. So if he is going for a title and he is in that position, then it's a really bad decision for Mercedes to decide, well, do we give away our data for next year to get in the title, or do we safeguard our ideas because he's off to a rival team that can beat us? So it's a really strange thing they're going to have to play. If Hamilton's in contention for the championship, we're going to see everyone falling out. If Hamilton's out of the championship hunt, then we're going to see him feeling ignored by Mercedes and more that relationship sour. So I think we're in for a very difficult year either way, but great for us watching and talking about it. Bad for them. I just want to pick up on the last point as well. Lewis did tell the team that his own engineers that he was leaving. He took them all out this morning to a private event. He took them paintballing. Let me tell you something. If I was just told everybody that you were leaving for a rival team, I don't think giving them all guns is the best idea, because presumably they're all going to shoot you in the back. So I think we know that Lewis lost paintball this afternoon.
Yeah, probably so. And Josh, that's an excellent point you bring up about what happens in lame duck years. And we've seen this time and time again, where you'll see them, start off, emotional, and like it's our last year together. We're gonna try to band together for this one last dance, one last shot to compete for wins and championships together. I don't, given Red Bull's dominant, I don't really see them competing for the championship this year at all. Maybe if something happens to Max, if the Mercedes car is good enough, maybe Lewis can sneak at least one final Grand Prix victory with Mercedes. But yeah, Josh, you're right. As the year goes on, it happens all across motorsports. At a certain point, you're cut off completely from like team meetings, meetings with the manufacturer, and a lot of other special meetings. So once that happens, that's going to be very hard for Lewis Hamilton. And Josh, I know you brought up the point, like what if they're in contention for the championship? I don't really think that's going to be the case given Verstappen's dominance, and Red Bull's probably going to bring an even better car than they had last year. But if that were the case, that would be very hard, for a decision for Mercedes to do if Hamilton were to be in contention for the championship. And in regards to Lewis Hamilton's decision here, we're just gonna have to wait and see. It could end up being a very smart decision, or it could be a very bad decision. Look at all the decisions that Fernando Alonso's made throughout his Formula One career. It seems like whenever he leaves a team, they automatically get much better. And, that would be horrible for Lewis Hamilton. Let's say he goes to Ferrari and all of a sudden now Mercedes is bringing a championship winning car again. And then Ferrari, is still basically where they are right now. Mercedes taking a step forward. But obviously, based on Lewis Hamilton's decision here to leave Mercedes, it seems like he believes that, Ferrari has much more upside in the future, that they'll give him a better chance to get back to competing for wins and world championships in the future than the Mercedes did. But it's certainly going to be interesting watching how this lame duck year plays out. Will Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton try to end on a positive note, or could things get very, messy and ugly later on into the season? And before we move on, I'm gonna read some comments here in the chat right here from Nathan saying thoughts on Alonso's to Mercedes. Josh knows you love Alonso. Well, when you're looking at someone like an Andrea Kimi Antonelli, I don't think you would want to bring up Antonelli so soon to the Mercedes senior team. So you'd probably want to place him, in an environment where there's not going to be a lot of pressure. We saw the same thing with Max Verstappen and Red Bull. They put him at Toro Rosso at the time and let him get some F1 experience before they moved him up to Red Bull. So I imagine Mercedes would do the same thing with Kimi Antonelli as well. We're going to talk about him later on in the program. And Astro Police, missed that comment there, but a day in the life says skip 2024 and go to 2025, please. And that comment there from Astro Police said him and George seem to get along. So I don't know, Josh, do you want to respond to that comment about Alonso?
Alonso's never picked the right horse, has he? I thought he'd got Ferrari right in 2010, and that went sour quite quickly due to Matteo Mattiacci, or whatever his name was, not getting along. I thought he made a good move to Alpine, and that did work out. But then he made the jump back over, didn't he? Where is he now? I've completely forgotten.
Aston Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, it's that kind of day.
Well, I don't know, Jeff. One podium with Alpine, and then he kind of set the world on fire. The first half of the year was Aston Martin. In the second half, they kind of fell back, but
that's because they had no development, and Stroll's about as useful as the chocolate teapot.
But to your point, that's the only time Alonso. I mean, every other time in his career, like when he got to McLaren, obviously for his second stint, and the Honda engine was obviously a disaster, and it seemed like everywhere he went, they would not be competitive, and then he'd leave, and then they'd become competitive, or they'd at least become more competitive than they were when he was there.
Ed says, here's something that nobody has considered. Mercedes let Lewis by himself in contrast to Dennis McLaren. Will Ferrari, who's so protective of their brand, give Lewis that same freedom? I was thinking that. It's a very weird clash, isn't it? To have those two together. I mean, Ferrari is historically a very, on the line job, and you don't toe the line there. You got to toe the line there. You can't go mild about it. But I think this new thing that Frederick Wasser's bringing in, he's sort of opening up Ferrari and giving it a bit of 21st century razzle dazzle. Oh, is that what they call it? Riz. Razzle dazzle. I might have just got that. I'm 24 years. I just don't get it. Oh dear, that might be it. Was it my turn for a question, by the way? About I've completely lost track where we are. The Alonso situation. Yeah. Right. I'm just going to put this out here. Alonso doesn't work with Honda. Honda hate Alonso. Alonso hates Honda. This is the thing that's gone on between Formula One and IndyCar. They do not get along. Aston Martin have signed with Honda for the 2026 power unit regulations. I don't think Alonso is going to be that keen to get going there again. And I would like to see Alonso at Mercedes, but that's not who I think is going to get the seat. We'll get onto that later on.
Alonso's also going to be 44 when it comes time for 2026. So you got to wonder, is he even still going to be? I mean, I know that, but talk about Lewis Hamilton, for example, he's approaching 40 as well. It seems like drivers are staying a little bit longer than they used to, but that is something to consider as well.
It's charisma. Oh, okay. Astro just learned it last week because I had no clue. No clue.
Yeah, Ned said that Lewis Hamilton is kind of like a modern day Juan Manuel Fangio. Fangio won a title with Ferrari in 1956 and then left immediately because he couldn't stand Enzo Ferrari. And scrolling back up, I know Ed had some other comments as well, saying it's felt like instability in the design office has made Lewis lose confidence in the team, too many reshuffles, and you're not sure if things will get better at Ferrari. And then your last comment you made saying this reminds me of Vettel's final year at Ferrari when he knew before the season started that he was going to be replaced with Carlos Sainz and took the win out of himself. I remember Vettel's last season at Ferrari. That was very painful to watch him. Like you could see, like he looked like he was very drained in the face. He looked like his hair started falling out as well. Then he cut his hair short and
to the constructors.
Yeah, that was a really rough year for Ferrari, especially Vettel. It just seemed like he was totally done with Formula One. Then he moves over to Aston Martin, and all of a sudden he has a full head of hair. That just shows you what stress and discontent can do to you. Yeah, so that was a really wild thing for Sebastian Vettel to go through that during that year. And I believe we're good to move on now to the next part of this segment. But Hamilton's last win was Saudi Arabia in 2021, the second to last race of the 2021 season. The next race was the infamous Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which is a race we promised never to talk about ever again on this program. Two winless seasons, and Ferrari has been outperforming and won races in 2022 and 2023. Now Hamilton activated the option to be released from his contract when the 2024 season ends. Josh, we haven't seen any driver win 8 world championships yet in Formula One, as Hamilton currently sits at 7. Could this be the main reason he switched, believing Ferrari would have a better car?
It's weird when we say Ferrari have got a good car, McLaren have got a good car, Mercedes don't. We've had 10 years of it being the opposite, and that's just swapped right back again. I think, without a doubt, Lewis has always wanted, as I said earlier, to drive a Ferrari. He's always wanted to race a Ferrari. And I think he wants a world championship. And to get an 8th in a Ferrari, I think that would prove him to a lot of the doubters who say, oh, well, it's not Schumacher, is he? Schumacher did it in Ferrari. Schumacher did this, Schumacher did that. I think he would solidify his position in Formula One as one of the greatest of all times if he wins an 8th title in a Ferrari. The Tifosi, I think Tifosi got a mixed relationship with Lewis. Sometimes they hate him, sometimes they don't. So I think if he got a title with them, it would solidify him as a true Tifosi Ferrari man. And there's a little bit of personal thing as well in this. I've got a feeling that if you look at all these heroes who have been around for more, we had Senna, who, changed over from McLaren, went to Williams as well. We never know how that was going to end, sadly. But he did the McLaren thing for Senna. Then look at his other heroes, Sterling Moss, all that 56 years in with Mercedes as well, and all that meant to him. And the connection he had with Sterling when he was alive as well, and learning about the team and the heritage there. He drove for Mercedes and won so many world championships. But then Niki Lauda was there, and Niki was the main reason, along with Osborne, that he came to Mercedes. But Niki, all that he did with Ferrari as well, winning the title in 75 and 77 as well. So he's got those stories of the team in a down period coming back, giving them a world championship. Lewis likes those type of stories. He likes that sort of drive to bring them back in. When he came in 07 in McLaren, they were having a down period, having lost both Raikkonen and Montoya. And he brought them back up and won a championship. Then it went a bit sour, so he went for a new challenge. He went to Mercedes and brought them up, did a world championship, got loads of them. And now it's sort of feeling the same again. He's done all he can here. So he's going to go to Ferrari and build them back up for another couple of years and sort of teach Leclerc as it goes along. And just sort of, it's a weird one. To me, the ageism is getting to me like, well, he's going to be 40, 41 by the time it's all over. Why is he at Ferrari? Why are they taking the risk? And all that. Why did they get rid of Vettel so much? And for the young hot gun of Sainz, Ferrari's vision of the past was the vision of the future. Now it's a vision of, let's have a young guy who we know is quick, but is struggling to keep form against one of the greatest of all time. So it's sort of like the age of wisdom against the young rookie. And it's weird calling Leclerc rookie because he's won 7 or 8, 9 races now. But it's that atmosphere alongside them. So I think it's not just the better car. it's the better environment, it's the better thrill of the chase for Hamilton to actually come in. And I think it's the heritage of these heroes that are sort of giving him sort of the extra leg up to do things. And I think if Williams were competitive right now, not Ferrari in that position, I think he would have gone to Williams for the same reason, heritage and the history of the sport. And I think, personally, if Williams were more competitive, he would have gone there because of James Vowles. And he's gone for the same reason Fred Vasseur. He knows these people. So it's comfort, it's a challenge, and it's just a little bit crazy, which is what Lewis is. So it kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, Josh, I don't have too much to add. I think I've, honestly answered the question in many respects in some of the previous segments, but I do think that, why else would he leave Mercedes, who has been his home for over a decade now in the sport, who he seems to have, at least up until this year, maybe such a great working relationship with, gets along with, Toto and everybody very well. But I guess there's also a part of me that wonders, maybe is it just in the back of Lewis's mind, like, want to win an 8th world championship. And obviously the current situation at Mercedes isn't allowing me to do so. So, Josh, to your point, if it were Williams or, how crazy would a McLaren reunion be, bringing everything full circle again? But whoever it is, maybe if I go somewhere else, I can at least say we tried, we did what we could, we changed locations, changed teams, and we have no regrets because we know that it just wasn't meant to be. Whereas if he stays in Mercedes, because he has trust in a team that maybe they can get their act together and bring a competitive car to take the fight to Red Bull again. But then Ferrari are actually the ones that did that. You can really sit back and play the what-if game even more from there. So, like I said, not too much to add on this one, but I think that, why else would he change teams at this point? He has to think that the grass is greener on the other side of the paddock at Scuderia Ferrari, and that they might give him a slightly better chance, maybe not as good a chance as Red Bull, but a slightly better chance with things currently at that 8th title.
Yeah, I think this question is a little bit harder to answer, but I feel like in this scenario, Ferrari works as a fail-safe sort of option for Lewis Hamilton because he knows that with Mercedes, he's not going to get that 8th world championship. They've struggled a lot the past 2 years. Part of the team discussions that he's been a part of, he probably knows that, he's not going to get his next championship here. So Ferrari serves as another car that he can test out. And, considering his age as well, this is probably going to be the last team he works with. So, either he gets the championship here, or if he doesn't, at least he goes down having driven for Ferrari from like that legendary sort of aspect where, you've got some like a lot of the greats who have driven for Ferrari that we were talking about earlier. So I think that Ferrari is a bit of a fail-safe sort of option for him. But yeah, I totally agree with the points that you guys made too, Ben and Josh.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add. It would be fantastic for Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari, and for all of Formula One if he's able to bring Ferrari a championship. I know we like to joke on this program and call Ferrari the Dallas Cowboys of Formula One, given their long drought, and because they haven't won. It's been a while since they've won a drivers' championship or a constructors' title. So if Lewis Hamilton is able to help them win at least a drivers' championship, that would be really, really huge for them to finally stop the bleeding. Ironically, the car is the color red there. And while Hamilton is motivated to win and earn a championship, so is his new teammate for 2025, Charles Leclerc, who's been quiet all day long. Leclerc joined Ferrari in 2019 and earned 2 wins, outperforming teammate Sebastian Vettel at the time. In 2022, he had 3 wins and looked to be the main rival for the championship early in the season, but Leclerc went winless in 2020, 2021, and 2023. Carlos Sainz won the Singapore Grand Prix last year, but finished behind Leclerc in the driver's standings. Leclerc ended up signing a contract extension with Ferrari recently, and he's expected to be with Ferrari well past 2025. Bringing you back in, Isha, does the signing of Hamilton complicate Leclerc's role at Ferrari?
Oh, absolutely. We've already seen that in the past 2-3 years, whenever Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc have had to go head to head, Ferrari has always put Charles Leclerc first. But now bringing in Lewis Hamilton into the mix, I think it's definitely going to make things harder for him. You're going to have 2 teammates that are both having the same goal. They both want to win a championship. Charles Leclerc has had a tough bit of time with Ferrari as well. And Lewis Hamilton's main purpose, most likely, of coming to Ferrari is to get that world championship. So who's Ferrari going to prioritize? When they're going head to head in races, which driver are they going to support So I think that this is definitely going to make things more difficult for Charles Leclerc. Having such a big driver as your partner, and then Ferrari may more likely support Lewis Hamilton in certain decisions and may try to prioritize him. So I think that this definitely does take away Charles Leclerc being able to secure a championship if that was something that they were planning on doing. But I think that's definitely going to make things harder for him.
Yeah, and it's the whole, again, it's Fred Vasseur, because he's sort of the glue now, isn't he? He's brought in two drivers that he's worked with in the past. He never worked with Carlos Sainz before he came to Ferrari, but he did work with Charles Leclerc, and I mentioned it on the grid shows last year. That's going to be a very key aspect to Ferrari, and the sort of half favoritism is that Leclerc and Vasseur have a working relationship already, and Hamilton predates Leclerc. So it's, who do you put number one? The guy's been at the team for several seasons since 2019, or the guy who's been here 5 minutes but is a 7-time world champion? It's very difficult to toe the line. I would personally take the approach of, look, you're both number one drivers, you're both equal, and then whoever's in the championship lead by around after the mid-season break, then we'll focus on one or the other. That has to be how it goes. Lewis has to go here knowing that he will not be top gun for a while. He's going to have to re-earn that. He's going there as a champion, but Leclerc's going there as more experienced at the team. Hamilton's moving into Leclerc's backyard. He did that with Rosberg, and look how that took. It took 2013 to get it right. Hamilton had to play second fiddle because Rosberg that year won 3 races. Hamilton only won the 1. So it's going to be a very slow burn across the board, but this is all development for 26 anyway. It's directly in for what Ferrari have for 2026. And I'm very excited to see what they've got to take Lewis Hamilton in there as well. And how it's going to work in terms of the complication between the two. I don't know. We'll get on to that later on. Oh, are we in that question now? Yeah, we are. Sorry. Daytona is still messing with my brain. How it all goes with the complication. Leclerc has said in the past, when all this came up in Monaco, Tom Clarkson asked him in the press conference, who would your ideal teammate be? And he turned around and said, hello, Lewis. And like that. And they said, he then said, seriously, anybody would be lucky to have Lewis Hamilton in the paddock as their teammate. You could learn a lot from them as well. So Leclerc's going to get a mentor. And that's what I said earlier on. I think he needs that. And I think Hamilton respects Leclerc and Leclerc respects Hamilton. There's a lot of respect. There's a lot of sort of mutuality of understandings of both what they've been through. And I think it's only good for Leclerc that Hamilton's going to be alongside as a teammate for at least 2 seasons, because it's going to push him to be faster. And it's exactly what he needs, because Leclerc needs to learn how to be a team leader. In my opinion, he hasn't done that in the last 2 seasons. Ferrari have had 2 equal drivers for a while now, as last year has proven with Sainz beating in win rate and in qualifying positions as well up until the last 3 races, because I think Leclerc qualified in the top. He qualified in the front row of the grid of 5 of the last 6 races, did Charles Leclerc, which is impressive to show Ferrari's second half of the season, well, last 5 races pace. Compare that with McLaren as well. So it's getting good, and Leclerc will get the experience of Hamilton, and it's going to be a little bit of maneuverability, but he's still number 1 for now. He's got that contract until the end of 28, so he's number 1. Hamilton will come in, they'll be equal, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, to Josh's point, I don't know if it matters too much in terms of complicating Leclerc's role at Ferrari, at least not at the beginning. I do think it might complicate Ferrari's strategy department, which is already complicated enough, and I think that could complicate the results for both Leclerc and Hamilton. So that'll be an interesting dynamic that they still have some time to get figured out, but they've been trying to figure out their strategy department for many, many years now, if we're being honest. So I don't know that I have too much hope that they can do that in the next couple of years with any sort of reliability and consistency. So it's going to be very interesting. I think somebody said in the chat room earlier, just let's skip 2024 and get right on to 2025. I feel the exact same way. I got to tell you, I know I said on this show yesterday with the Andretti Global rejection news that I'm not very enthusiastic about 24, but this sport, man, just brings me right back in. Of course, within 24 hours, you've already got me psyched up for 2025 based on the news that we got today. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
Just one more thing. Yeah, let's not skip this year because we've got 14 of the 20 drivers out of contract. That's what this year is going to be about. But for the first time ever, we've got 2023 and 2024 starting off with exactly the same drivers and exactly the same team. Next year, God knows what's going to happen. It is 14 of the 20 car drivers completely out of contract.
Yeah, silly season for the 2025 Formula One season is going to be really, really crazy, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc are going to get along at Ferrari. Like you guys were saying, I think Charles Leclerc can certainly benefit from having someone like Lewis Hamilton coming in as a mentor, pushing him to be faster, as you were saying, Josh. And I think that it can only benefit him in that case. But as we see time and time again, when you have two really good drivers like Hamilton and Leclerc come together, there could be a little bit of drama. And Ben, to your point, Ferrari has historically had a lot of issues with their strategy, which is already complicated enough. And having two number one drivers like Hamilton and Leclerc on the team, the strategy department could get even more complicated, which could end up costing Ferrari a lot more than we've seen in recent years. So for the sake of Ferrari and Hamilton, I hope they get this right, and we see Ferrari back at the front of the grid competing for F1 wins and championships on a more regular basis. And before I hand over things in here, I have some comments in the chat that we're gonna catch up on. Edward Hunter said, "You think this is very reminiscent of Prost versus Mansell at Ferrari in 1990, with Hamilton as Prost being the experienced champion and Leclerc as Mansell, the incumbent Ferrari race winner?" And Adam Limmery said, "You remember that in 1990 as well." And got a comment, a question here saying, who takes the Mercedes seat here? And yeah, like I said, we're going to get into that a little later in the program. You say you were Mercedes, you would go with Alonso next to Russell. Yeah, and Ben, you brought up the point. By the time I knew Alonso's going to be is going to be a lot older. So, and Kimi Antonelli, who's their young development driver, he's like I say, he's very young, and sticking him in a Mercedes in 2025 might not be the best thing for his career. So if you can bring in Fernando Alonso for a few years, let Antonelli develop in an environment with less pressure, you could easily plug in Fernando Alonso short term here in a day in a life, with a good point right here, saying that this is equivalent to Tom Brady going to the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, just like I was saying, we like to joke that Ferrari are the Dallas Cowboys of Formula One, given all the high expectations that we have of them every year, and they never fail to disappoint. Or like Stephen A. Smith likes to say, just wait. and that's becoming a yearly thing with him. And then Life says that you don't think Hamilton is going to get to number 8 for some reason in motorsports. It really seems like the ceiling for championships is 7. That is just very, very difficult to get to 8. And Adam Limmery also says you don't expect to see Lewis Hamilton win an 8th championship. Got a question here for you, Isha, saying if you get a chance to become a Ferrari driver, would you take it?
Yeah, I definitely would. But I think the more relevant question right now is with the Mercedes seat. They're hiring currently. They're looking for a spot. You want to bring in some young talent, maybe a female to bring some more positive attention. I'll sign up. I'm right here. If you're looking for somebody, if you're hiring, I'm right here, Mercedes.
I think you have to go through Atlantis King first. I think she's on the short list, so you might have to
Yeah.
You get that reference, they're a real one.
Yeah, I get that reference. And another comment there from Mouse Evil saying you don't think they're going to put Antonelli in a team that needs to compete for race winning. Yeah, probably not right away. That might be more destructive. Like I was saying earlier, even Red Bull didn't do that to Max Verstappen. They put him in Toro Rosso and then decided to move him up to the senior team when they felt like he was ready. And when a lot of us didn't think Max was ready, the rest is history, because he hasn't looked back ever since.
Yeah, well, I guess Kobe, to your point, I mean, obviously I wouldn't want to rush Kimi Antonelli either, but think of Lewis Hamilton's own career. I think a lot of people thought, he maybe wasn't quite ready for the top McLaren seat in 2007, and then he went on this string of podiums and very nearly won a championship as a rookie. So you just never know how things are going to turn out. We've got plenty of dominoes still to fall with this seat, and we're going to talk about one of them right now with talking about teammate relationships here. Let's talk about the guy who's the odd man out at Ferrari now in 2025, and that is Carlos Sainz, who was in contract talks with Ferrari. Those stalled in December of what is now last year, 2023. He now has 1 year left, which will be, I suppose, a lame duck year for him now. And he released this statement saying the following: "Following today's news, Scuderia, Ferrari, and myself will part ways at the end of 2024. We still have a long season ahead of us, and like always, I will give my absolute best for the team and for the Tifosi all around the world. News about my future will be announced in due course." Now, Sainz is rumored to be in line for the future Audi seat, but that team may take a while to get to a competitive state, similar to the top 3 teams in Formula One. So, Kobe, I'll start with you. I'll give you a little bit of a break from the moderator's role here, and we'll let you answer this question first. Could Carlos Sainz go elsewhere, or do you see a domino effects of a busy 2025 silly season everywhere? As Josh mentioned, so many contracts are up at the end of 24.
Yeah, I believe he said like there's 14 seats that are going to be available for 2000. Yeah, 14 seats available for 2025. Like, there's no telling what's going to happen. While we've seen Carlos Sainz rumored, to lead the Audi effort once they come online in a couple of years' time, I think anything could happen. We've seen a lot of rumors, not come true in Formula One, motorsports in general. So while Carlos Sainz might be the favorite to lead the Audi program, he might sign on somewhere else. I know Mercedes is going to be looking for a driver, but I always found it very interesting how Carlos Sainz, has been able to, stay in Formula One this long, be able to go from team to team to team and all of this. And I'm sure he's going to be able to find another team that'll take his services. So right now, I think it's really up in the air where Carlos Sainz could go, but I do have confidence that we're going to see him continue his Formula One career.
Yeah, I agree with Kobe. I think Carlos does have a lot of options. I do think, though, that had Mercedes wanted Carlos Sainz to take Lewis Hamilton's spot, it would have been something that they would have announced earlier on. But I think that Mercedes is really considering all the options they have right now. And, as you also mentioned, Kobe, Carlos Sainz could also be a potential candidate for one of the Audi seats as well, because we do know that his dad has that connection to Audi as well. But as you guys mentioned, it may take a few years for Audi to get competitive enough for Carlos Sainz to join onto the team. But hopefully, whatever team he ends up going with, it does turn out to be positive for him, because he is quite a talented driver. And as we saw, he was the only non-Red Bull driver to win last season as well. But to answer the second part of that question, the domino effect, 2025 is definitely going to be a very busy, silly season. Josh pointed out there's 14 contracts up. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to follow along and see what happens. And honestly, I was pretty excited going into this 2024 season, but now there's so much that we're excited for 2025. I kind of just want to skip through this year and get on to the next season.
So like 73% of the field, isn't it? It's really bizarre. But somewhere, if we're all very, very quiet, somewhere in the distance, we can hear Jolyon Palmer laughing. I think that's quite ironic. If you're wondering why, Jolyon Palmer got his seat taken from him by Carlos Sainz. When Sainz left Toro Rosso, he joined Renault for the last 4 races of the season and effectively ended Jolyon's career in Formula One after he just got his best ever result of 6th at Singapore. And Jolyon's not bitter, but I would not be surprised if he's a bit, like to him over there, because he's now been kicked again. Let's not forget, he got dropped by Renault. He got dropped by Ferrari now. If I was Mercedes, I wouldn't take him. Sainz is a very good driver. He's very quick. He's always there at the end of the race, as Martin Brundle said. And I think what he did at Silverstone was very clinical to get the win from Ferrari and Leclerc wanting it to be Leclerc, but Leclerc damaged wing and rubbish tyres. To me, I thought he really came alive at Singapore. That was a masterclass race. Didn't have the fastest car, wasn't the fastest driver, but he played the game. He backed Lando up into the 2 Mercedes, and that got him the win. So that was a very good. It reminds me a bit of Prost. Not got the speed, but he's got the brain. He's got it up here as well to where he knows. And it's not going to be Mercedes. As you said, Isha, it would have been announced immediately. They would have just done direct swap. It's not going to be Red Bull, because that's going to be Danny Ricciardo. It's not going to be Toro Rosso, because he's not going to go massively backwards. The only option he's got is Audi. Now, that's 2026. Now, does he take the risk of going to Sauber for 2025 and just sort of having a year there, getting used to it all? It's a risk there. There's lots at stake if he does that. But then again, there's a lot of risk if he takes a year out, because where do you go? I see this happening. He'll go in 2025 to World Endurance Championship and race for Ferrari there in their hypercar program and try and win Le Mans as like a goodbye gift. And then in 2026, he'll come in with Audi as the team leader, either alongside Bottas. I don't think that's going to happen, or more realistically, as I said all along, alongside Schumacher. So there's loads up in the air about that. But this silly season, piece by piece, it's getting more and more complicated. We thought it was going to be, we knew it was going to be big. We did not know that the biggest piece on the board was going to get moved immediately. This has kicked off everything. We all pretty much had an idea where everybody might go. Forget it. It's all gone. Nobody saw this coming, so nobody's got a clue what's going to happen next.
Yeah, well, Josh, I know I agree with you for sure. It's not going to be Toro Rosso. It might, however, be Visa Cash App RB or whatever the heck they're called, to put it a little bit.
V-Carb, I think it's now is.
I'm
not calling that.
When was that? Was that Kimmy who came on the radio? I'm stuck behind the Force India or whatever the fill in the blank.
Whatever the
Sport Pesa Racing Point Formula One team.
Oh God! Calling them in the comment box was ridiculous because it was still Force India, but it was Racing Point Force India, and then it became Racing Point, and then it became Aston Martin. And it was just like, I just wanted to grab Lawrence Stroll by the throat and go, "What is your name? What is your name?" Because it's annoying everybody in the comment box. But yeah, I don't think it'll end up back at where is it, Minardi?
There you go, even better. All right, well, let's talk about the teammate situation a little bit more here for 2025. It's been anticipated that Lewis Hamilton will likely have at least a 2-year deal at Ferrari because of the regulation changes coming in 26. Now, Hamilton's been racing in Formula One for a long time. He's obviously much closer to the end of his career than the beginning. Doesn't have too many years left. We can't imagine. At the same time, Leclerc also wants to establish himself as a championship contender and, like everyone, beat the current 3-time reigning world drivers champion Max Verstappen in Red Bull Racing. So, Josh, first to you on this one. How would a Hamilton-Leclerc teammate situation work in your estimation?
I touched on it earlier on. Frederick Vasseur has got to make sure that at the start of their relationship, they are equal, but respect Charles Leclerc that he's been here the longest, while also respecting that Lewis is a 7-time champion. So that has to be done. But as the season goes on, you need to let them work together, let them grow together, let them have faith in each other, and then go from there as to who you prioritize in the championship run, because they're going to be very, very quick together. I have a feeling. But in terms of their personal relationship, as I said, this is great because Lewis can now teach Charles everything he knows. It's kind of like what he tried to do with George, but to me, George always strikes me as a driver who's got a bit of an ego. And Lewis did try and teach him, and it didn't work. George has always had a bit of a head on him anyway from his early days. To me, the pairing has always been Lewis has always been teaching Albon. That's to me is the unwritten sort of thing that we never sort of see, but it's there. Lewis always teaches Albon. So I reckon he's now got a protege in Formula One, and I can think of none better than Charles Leclerc, to be fair. So that's going to be very, very good. And in terms of off track, I think they'll share data. Lewis never shares data. Hates sharing data. I think he would this time because it's Ferrari. You've got to work together. It's there to win a championship. And Leclerc, I think, is going to be a teammate like Valtteri was, not in terms of that he's going to let him win, but in terms of the fact that they're going to work together to make the team better. And then he's going to have a fight with him. So it's wins all around. It's going to be great. It seems to be the exact plot of this movie that Lewis is producing with Apple, with Brad Pitt. It's strangely similar about an old guy going to a new team and then teach the young gun how it goes. It's very similar. It's just weird.
Yeah, I'm sure Ferrari hopes Hamilton and Leclerc will be able to work well together as teammates. And like you were saying, Josh, don't expect Charles Leclerc to be his wingman, as Valtteri Bottas was referred to, which, really, really irritated Bottas when that happened. But on paper, Hamilton, Leclerc, that looks really, really good. And I think it could have potential depending on how things go at Ferrari if they figure out everything in the strategy department. Produce a car that can take the fight to Red Bull or even Mercedes if they're able to get back up there. Then I think that the situation between Hamilton and Leclerc can work out over time. But while things look good on paper, it doesn't always translate to real life results. So Hamilton and Leclerc, they're gonna have to work really, really hard and dig in, and drop their egos and truly work together as teammates if they really want this partnership to work out.
Yeah, well, I hope that, things turn out to be really well between Leclerc and Hamilton, just as Josh mentioned. I hope that everything turns out to be well and it's more of a like master teaching a protege like skills and that kind of thing. But I think that honestly it's going to be tougher in person. I think that in theory it sounds great. Great idea for both of them to be working in Ferrari together. But I think that in person there's gonna be a bit of tension or some degree of animosity maybe between them because we know that Leclerc has also had his eyes set on the championship, um, and he has been a bit frustrated the past year or 2, not being able to, do as well as he hopes to do, and then, bringing in Lewis Hamilton on top of that. So this is something that I also talked about a little bit earlier on, but I think that it could lead to a degree of tension and struggle between them. I hope that things work out. I hope that it turns out to be as good as it sounds on paper, but honestly, I feel like in real life there might be, some sort of struggle between them.
Well, the draw of driving for Ferrari has always lured the best in Formula One history. You think of the Vettels, Alonso's, Raikkonens of the world, Michael Schumacher, of course, the only other 7-time world champion, Alan Prost, Nigel Mansell, Niki Lauda, who was a big influence on Lewis's career when he was at Mercedes. But there is a side of Ferrari that Lewis will have to deal with, the pressure coming from Maranello. The Ferrari clown memes always pop up representing the strategy department. It's been 16 years since a driver has won the Drivers' Championship with Ferrari, the second longest stretch in team history without a Drivers' Championship, following the 21-year stretch from 1979 to 2000. So, Isha, I'll go to you. I hope you can still hear me. I'm getting that notification that my internet might be a little bit weak at the moment, but
No, you're good.
this add pressure? Does this add to the pressure on the Ferrari team to build a car capable of winning a championship for Lewis Hamilton, to build confidence within the team?
Maybe to a very small degree it might help build confidence within the team. But I think that mostly it's going to add pressure because everybody knows that, Fred's got Hamilton coming over. Hamilton's mainly just coming over to get that 8th world championship, right? Or to at least be winning more races and to deliver on, whatever promises Fred made to him. So I think that is definitely going to add pressure to Hamilton. It's going to add pressure to the whole Ferrari team, to Fred. I think that, you know, right now things seem like they may end up going really well, but I genuinely feel like this might turn out to be a bit of a problem for both Ferrari and Hamilton.
Sorry, just prepping. Couldn't resist holding up the nice Ferrari flag. Does it add pressure to this team? I don't know, because they've had situations where a world champion has come in before, and in the first couple of years they do really, really well. Just got to let that down because that's actually from the track. My sister brought that back from 2011. So Schumacher came in with an entire team around him and made it work. That was a world champion coming to a team that was underperforming. He made them win. Alonso came in for a while. It was working, and they got so close to the title 2 occasions. Didn't work out in the end. Raikkonen, last drivers' champion as well. That was sort of like kept himself under the radar throughout the season just by being consistent, and then really pounced in the last 3 races. Prost walked away. Let's not forget that. Nigel Mansell walked away. So those days weren't that great. Lauda, as I said earlier on, is the big one. I think Lewis would be looking up to as like, yeah, this is how I can honour him the most. And I think that's going to be something to watch out for. Vettel, however, that was a tragic tale, wasn't it? And I wonder if that tragic tale could be put right in any way. I wonder where that's going in the foreseeable future.
Well, Ferrari's been under pressure for, every single year for how many years now to try to end the drought and finally get on the another constructors and another drivers championship. So I think pressure, is something that they've just gotten used to over the years because they want everyone to stop talking about, their incompetent strategy department, and so many years gone without winning any championships at all, whether it's the constructors or the drivers championship. So I really think that Ferrari is going to be working very hard under the leadership of Frederick Vasseur, who we're going to talk about in just a little bit, to finally end the bleeding so they can finally, become the world champions of Formula One again. And I think that Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, that driver pair, and like I've said before, assuming they get the car right, this is probably going to be one of the best chances that they have at strapping the streak in a long time. And for their, like I said, for their sake, I hope they're able to do that. But who knows what could happen? This is Formula One. There's some things are more predictable, like Max Verstappen winning most of the races again this year, and some things are unpredictable. Wondering if Hamilton and Leclerc can get the job done for the Tifosi.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of the comments that have been coming in here in the chat. Our friend Ed Hunter saying some of Sainz's pole laps for Ferrari at Monza and Singapore last year were top notch. Absolutely. Let's see. Mouse Evil says he'll go to stake in 2025 and be there when Audi comes in. We'll see. Certainly, like we said, a lot more dominoes to fall here. Ed comes back and says Sainz won't want to be at stake. It's full-blown Audi or bust. He'll probably go somewhere more competitive to fill time for 2025. Mouse Evil brings up the fact that 1 year out of F1 could break your career potentially, but we've seen...
He did it for Alonso.
Well,
Alonso was out in 02 and he came back 1 in 03 and went on with it with a competitive team. So Alonso sort of broke the mold, and
yeah, well, I mean,
he's still proving that now.
Yeah, I mean, Ocon, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he spent a year it was a Mercedes reserve. So, it's not impossible. And we'll get to another one who's spent a year and now looks like going to spend 2 years on the sidelines here in a couple of questions. But, who knows what's going to happen? Like we mentioned, A Day in My Life says better than Vettel and Leclerc. We'll have to wait and see. Ed says Ferrari is always under pressure from the entirety of Italy. If Lewis is smart, he'll do what Ross Brawn did, ban Gazzetta dello Sport and all newspapers from Maranello. Alonso is crown jewel material. Look to Van Dorn, Verline, and many others. Thank you for that, Mouse Evil. Ed comes back and says Alonso also left at the end. Josh, to your point there as well. A little bit different because he had already been a multiple-time world champion and had a lot of success, but he did take a sabbatical as well. Kimi Räikkönen did and went rally racing and even tried some NASCAR for a couple of races there at Charlotte. So who knows what the future could hold for Carlos Sainz, but I think those Audi rumors definitely have some weight to them, and it'll be interesting to see if anything comes of that. Now let's move on, and I know Isha brought him up briefly in her answer, but let's talk about the team principal Ferrari, Frederick Vasseur. No stranger to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton won Formula 3 and GP2 at the time, now Formula 2 championships with his ART team in 2005 and then in 2006. So, Kobe, we'll start with you here. Does this elevate Vasseur's status at Ferrari, and does it give him more control? Maybe Ross Brawn comes to mind as a comparison when he recruited Michael Schumacher back to Mercedes in 2010, the relationship that they had.
I'm going to say the exact same thing about Fred Vasseur that I said when we first talked about this on Grid Tonight when he was announced the team principal of Ferrari. I said I know it's hard today in professional sports, but you're going to have to give Fred Vasseur some time, to try to rebuild Ferrari and bring it back to its glory days. And I think that this is another piece of the puzzle. First, Frederick Vasseur had to, see what the team looked like from the inside, see what was going right, what was going wrong, throw out everything that was bad, and try to bring your own people, your own method to try to get Ferrari back to where it's needed to be. And now you bring in one of the best drivers in the history of Formula One, Lewis Hamilton, pair him up with Charles Leclerc, who, as you mentioned, Ben, has shown a lot of world championship potential, but just hasn't been able to put all the pieces together yet. So I feel like that this is a very good signing by Ferrari. Obviously, I think it does elevate Fred Vasseur's status at Ferrari. But when you have Hamilton and Leclerc, as your drivers, the pressure, we just talked about it. It's just gonna continue to rise. But like I said, Ferrari is no stranger to the pressure, and I think Frederick Vasseur, he's gonna try his best to make sure that he gives Hamilton and Leclerc the best possible chance to go out there and finally reach those expectations that we expect of Ferrari.
Yeah, I agree with Kobe. Not much more to add there, but if you bring in a driver like Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest F1 drivers of all time, it's definitely going to elevate your status within the own Ferrari team. I think that, over time, this may, if it turns out to be well, if Leclerc and Hamilton end up driving well together and actually doing well for Ferrari, it would elevate Fred's status even further within Ferrari and within the other teams as well. But if any problems occur, it would come back to bite him because he's the main guy in charge of this big move of bringing Hamilton over from Mercedes. So, agreeing with Kobe there, I think that as of right now, it definitely does elevate Fred's status within Ferrari.
I think as well, the good thing about Fred Vasseur is that we always knew that this year would be a bit of a wait and see, the 2023 season that was, and that he really get the ball running in 2024. He said something last year in an interview, I've just remembered, that something big is coming to Ferrari. You just watch this space. Did he know he was going to get Lewis, or is there something else in the pipeline? Because to go on what I said earlier, I don't think this has happened in the space of less than 2 months. And he get that interview back in, I think, Zandvoort. So what have Ferrari got up their sleeve if it's not Lewis Hamilton as the announcement? There's something else going on. He's building something. And add to that McLaren as well, and their whatever it takes, and Mercedes, if it is good, if it's not, we don't know. But at least that's a three-way fight for the title. Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull with an option of Mercedes. It is slowly pacing back up, and I wish we didn't have the regulation change to 26 because we see it all the time. A team dominates at the start of a regulation change, and then right at the end, everyone's so close together, and we get the best Formula One, and then they go and change it again because everyone's panicked when it didn't work to begin with. Everyone in Formula One is I call it goldfish memory. They all have goldfish memories. They all forget the beginning pain and are all really excited by the end of it, and then they go and do it again because they're panicking. It's so stupid. But I think this is going to, if this works out, we could be seeing yet another golden age for Ferrari. And I think nobody would deny seeing that, because I think it'll be good for Formula One. To put my Bernie Ecclestone cap on, if Ferrari wins, it's good for Formula One. If it's good for Ferrari, it's good for Formula One, because if they're happy, F1's happy. And I think that's sort of a general thing. It's the oldest team on the grid, and it's got such a following behind it, such a passion. It's about 15% of the fan base, which is quite huge compared to everything else in the fan base. So it's very big. So if they're happy, everyone's happy.
All right, well, let's start to tease who we think might fit into that Mercedes seat that Lewis Hamilton will be vacating after the 2024 season. A name that comes to mind, the Schumacher name, I think a lot of people might forget, and I think a lot of people might not give this guy enough credit. Michael Schumacher helping build the Mercedes program that was so successful when Lewis Hamilton came in and replaced him after he retired for good at the end of the 2012 season. That's something that I think gets lost in the comparison sometimes between our two 7-time world champions, is the fact that Lewis actually replaced Michael when he came to join Mercedes at 2013. That was Michael Schumacher's seat that he vacated to retire after the end of 2012. Now we have Mick Schumacher, his son, who came into Formula One with Haas, spent 2 years there, showed a little bit of improvement in 2022, but not enough to retain the seat. This is going to be his second year on the sidelines in Formula One, but he does have a relationship with Mercedes, just as his father did. It would be poetic in some ways for him to take that seat back from Lewis Hamilton. But Kobe, we'll start with you. Do you think that would be even a realistic option to begin with, Mick Schumacher back at Mercedes in 2025?
I mean, he's already inside the organization as a reserve driver. So if you can't really find anybody else who fits the mold for 2025, you can just plug and play Mick Schumacher. I think Mick Schumacher definitely deserves another chance to show what he can do in Formula One. I think Mercedes will be a really great option for him. I know he's keeping himself busy this year. In 2024, he's going to be driving for Alpine in the World Endurance Championship, going to have a chance to compete for overall wins, especially the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So, and then at the other race weekends, he's going to be with Mercedes as well as a reserve driver in case Hamilton or Russell can't go. You have Mick Schumacher there to fill in. So I think right now Mick Schumacher, it's a possibility he could get the call in 2025. But there's a lot of other really good drivers who are currently on the Formula One grid that are going to be chasing after that Mercedes seat. So Mick Schumacher is just one of many options that Mercedes is going to have. But it would not surprise me if they decided to give Mick his second stint in F1.
Yeah, when I first heard about, this opening within Mercedes after Lewis Hamilton leaving, one of the first people I thought of was Mick Schumacher because, he's already the reserve driver. He's done quite a lot of testing for Mercedes this past season as well. And they've already got a good relationship. So that would definitely he would definitely be one of the options that they could consider, but as Kobe pointed out, they do have other options, and, I feel like he's not exactly their first option. If other things fail, then they might come back to him, but he is a talented driver, and I think he does deserve another spot in F1.
It's so tricky because I'm sat here and I was just thinking about if it could be Schumacher, and then my mind started to drift to other drivers that we'll get to because I know the next question's coming up about it, and it's making me go mad because I'm smiling because there's so many opportunities that I'd love to see alongside George Russell. There's so many drivers that would be so good as that battle teammate, and I don't know, it's so hard to tell. And I think Schumacher is the safety option. They've got Mercedes need to play this safe. They've got a whole year now. Realistically, they've got about 7 months to find a replacement because this driver market's going to get very competitive very fast. And they're now don't forget, we've also got a Red Bull seat open as well with Perez out of contract, and he's not going to stay. And if they are not going to switch over to Danny Ricciardo, which I think they would, then that seat's open too. So Mercedes have got a war on two fronts here. That there's going to be drivers that don't want to go to them and want to go to hold on for Red Bull, but they might want them, but the drivers don't want to tie them down because they might have a Red Bull seat. So we're in for a very difficult time, but I think Mick's going to, as you all say, definitely going to be the safety option. If I don't think he would do. I don't think he would be. But if it did happen, poetic and beautiful, definitely. With the 4.7 on the silver arrow. But he's not my pick. I think he's going to go elsewhere. I think Mick could be in Formula One, but I think he'll go elsewhere.
Yeah, well, I'm with you guys. I think he certainly deserves a second shot. And I know some people say, oh, he just got the right because his last name. He won an F3 championship, spent 2 years in F2, won an F2 championship. You win an F2 championship, in my mind, you deserve at least 1 or 2 years in Formula One. And Mick got that. I know.
Not in a Haas.
Yeah, but yeah, and there you go. He was in the worst car up until that point, the worst car that Haas had ever put together. I know they took a little bit of a step in the right direction in 22, but you look at where that team is right now. This pattern that Mick had, get in the championship 1 year, win the championship the next. He was never going to win the 2022 World Championship in a Haas, right? It's a different world when you get to the amount of the gap, the size of the gap between the top teams in F1 and the teams at the back of the pack like Haas. It was not necessarily a fair shot, I don't think, for Mick to be able to show what he could do. So I'd like to see him in a team like Mercedes. I don't know that they'd be, I know he has a relationship already with the team, but, after 2 years out of the series, would you want to plug him right back into a top team like that? Maybe he goes to, I don't know if Williams is going to have a seat available. I know Sargent's kind of on a year-to-year basis. Who knows what Alex Albon's going to do? But we'll just have to wait and see. I would certainly like to see him get a second shot in F1 somewhere regardless. So whether that's with Mercedes or not. So I guess we'll leave it there for now. Kobe, I'll hand it back to you. I don't know if we want to go back to, I know we've had some chat comments come in, or if we want to keep rolling here.
I guess we'll just keep rolling with the program. And as we've been saying, this news has been drawing a lot of international attention to Formula One. A day after F1 was under fire for denying Andretti entry into F1, now everyone is talking about 2025. 2024, as we've been saying, really didn't have much of a silly season or any at all, with all the drivers from 2023 returning to the same teams. And once again, Max Verstappen is the favorite to win the championship. And I know we've already talked about this a little bit, talking about not really looking forward to 2024 and really looking forward to seeing what happens in 2025 and 2026. But Ben, will 2024, is this like shaping up to be a forgettable season for F1 already before it even begins, with the hope of 2025 seeing Hamilton with Ferrari, and then the new regulations coming on board in 2026?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example. I feel like there is one, in sports where it's like, everybody's looking forward to 2 or 3 years from now when all this is supposed to fall into place, and we just kind of have to get there. And, we're just kind of in waiting mode as another whole season is still to be run here. It is quite a weird feeling because, like I mentioned on yesterday's show, I have never in my life felt less enthusiastic about this sport in many respects right now, based on the news that came out yesterday and the attitude of a lot of people within it that don't want the 11th team, Andretti Global, to come into the sport here. I don't think that sends a very good message, and I think that a lot of fans are going to be disillusioned and want to turn the sport off. And then we get news like this today, and all of a sudden, it's everybody can't wait for 2025, and people are going to be roaring back to see if Lewis Hamilton can get that elusive 8th World Drivers' Championship with Scuderia Ferrari. So I tend to think that way. That 24 is going to be pretty forgettable. Again, for parity's sake, this isn't me wishing ill will on Red Bull or Max Verstappen or anything, but I hope he doesn't win as many races as he won in 2023, because I don't think that's good for the sport either. I think we need to see some parity. I would like to see Lewis get at least one more win with Mercedes. I know Charles Leclerc really wants to get back to the top step of the podium. Carlos Sainz is going to want to get there as well. McLaren have only won that one race in Italy when they got their 1-2 finish. Lando Norris, I mean, how many podiums is he up to now? Looking for that race win. Oscar Piastri has a sprint win. I know he wants to get a real one. I mean, there's a lot of great storylines, I think, for any of these drivers if they can win. So I would hope that Max Verstappen could be kind enough to share a little bit of the glory. He can still win his world championship and everything, but maybe only 14 of the 24 races, which is still going to be enough to win the championship easily. But let's let McLaren and Ferrari get a couple here or there. Let Mercedes get a couple. But otherwise, I think it's going to be pretty forgettable if it's just another dominant season again. And then hopefully with 2025 coming around, we'll have some new drivers in new places. Maybe that'll shake things up a bit. And then maybe they really get shaken up with the new regulation changes in 26.
Yeah, Ben, you kind of took my point there about McLaren that I was about to make, but we've all been talking about 2025 and 2026, and we're really excited to see everything that's happening because you've got 14 drivers that are going to be out of contract. You've got this whole thing with Hamilton and Ferrari. But 2024, even if Max Verstappen ends up being the world champion, which he most likely will be, but if the other teams are able to put up a good fight, especially McLaren, I don't think it will be that easily of a forgettable season because McLaren ended last season on a pretty good note. And, with the Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri pairing, I think that we're going to see a lot of interesting things happen this season. I think that, Lando, I believe last season had 6 or 7 second place finishes, and him and Oscar together had, I think, 2 or 3 shared podiums as well. So, I think if we're thinking just about McLaren, I think that they're going to bring us a really interesting 2024 season. But if we compare this season to what's coming up to us in 25 and 26, then I think in comparison to those years, it may seem like this is a pretty boring and forgettable season.
Let me excite you about this year, everybody, and give you some faith and some hope. Red Bull had the cost cap penalty given to them for breaking the 2021 rules in 2022. Now, that rule affected the development of the 2024 car because it limited their use of the wind tunnel in 2023. So that means that the penalty that they got for breaking the rules 3 years ago is now in effect. So Red Bull had 10% less aero time combined with their 40% less they already had. So they had the least amount of aero time compared to the entire team on the grid. That has severely affected their development package for this year. Adrian Newey has having to do it all very much on his own brain, which is not too bad. It should work, but it's a risk that they're going to have to navigate because they can't use the wind tunnel. McLaren, in turn, have got a brand new wind tunnel in-house that they've been running. We've seen it in the photos with the livery leak, and they have got something. We saw at the end of last year that they were already developing something when their wind tunnel they're using from Toyota in Germany. Now, with their own wind tunnel at home, they've got something, and they will be competitive. Ferrari are on the up. They were, remember, the only other team to win a race last year, bar Piastri in the sprint race, but as a Grand Prix, Ferrari won. Mercedes didn't. Now, if Mercedes have got something that could be anywhere near race-winning capacity, that's going to be fun to see. But in my opinion, it's going to be Red Bull, a bit more limited compared to McLaren, who's on the rise, and Ferrari at the back front. We're going to see Red Bull versus McLaren for the World Championships, Ferrari and Mercedes battling for third, and it's going to be a very competitive championship. Plus all the driver market stuff, that's going to completely throw up the entire season. Trust me, it may start off boring, but this year has got the potential to be a very good season. Remember, in 2020, we were all saying, the 2021 season is going to be boring. It's all same regulations. Mercedes is going to dominate. Look what happened. One of the greatest seasons we ever saw. Trust me, anything can happen in Formula One, and it usually does.
Yeah, Josh, I certainly hope that we have a 2024 season that's a lot more memorable than what we saw in 2023. And George Russell, he's expected to stay at Mercedes. And some are wondering if development driver, we've talked about him quite a bit already, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, will get fast tracked to Formula One. He's going to be racing in Formula 2 this year with Prima after skipping Formula 3 altogether. However, drivers currently on the F1 grid would love to find a way into that Mercedes seat. Maybe Fernando Alonso, someone with the following name recognition, gets one last shot to compete for wins and world championship if Mercedes can bring a good car. We could also see a driver who has exceeded expectations like Alex Albon get a look as well. Starting with you, Isha, which 3 drivers do you think will be on the Mercedes shortlist tomorrow morning?
Well, this is definitely probably the hardest question that we've done today. But, one of the drivers I would have said, had you asked me a few hours earlier, would have been Carlos Sainz right away. However, considering that it has been quite a few hours since the announcement was made that Hamilton's going to Ferrari and nothing has been said about who's taking that spot, I don't think it's going to be Carlos Sainz. I don't think he has any chance of taking that seat because that's something that they would have announced earlier on in the day. The second driver that I would think of would be Alex Albon. Kobe, you just mentioned him, but he's very young and very talented. And I think that he has a very good shot of taking Hamilton's seat. And the third driver I was thinking about, I don't think Josh is going to like this answer, but Daniel Ricciardo. I think Josh definitely wants to see him over at Red Bull, but honestly, I feel like Daniel Ricciardo could do pretty well in that Mercedes next to George Russell. I think that it's something that would be really interesting to see. And out of the 3 that I mentioned, I think that's the one that I would be looking forward to the most.
I like that bet. I do like that. Put Ricardo in there. I didn't even think about him. Out of contract again at the end of this year because he's only on a single year, isn't he? So, yeah, that could be fun. I'll keep that in mind. That's a good call. That could be fun. But he's got that eye on that Red Bull with Perez. That's where it's going. Right. Do you want my... I'll give you 2 pretty much. I know Isha said Albon, so I'm trying to avoid it. So I'm going to say Ocon because he is part of Toto Wolff's development program. Kimi Antonelli is definitely going to be up there because he's so fast. And George Morgan, who was PSGL's F1 commentator, but also FRECA and GT World Open commentator, we were having a discussion with him about 2 years ago when we had a PSGL welcome sort of event. And we were talking. And he said that he got told that Toto just signed Kimi Antonelli to the Mercedes program and he will be in Mercedes very, very soon. And now that Hamilton's gone, 2026 around the corner. Yeah, 2025, maybe a bit early, but 26, yeah. So maybe Kimi Antonelli is a shout. Ready for my third one, which I think is more than likely, whether it's on a 1 year or a 2 year contract. If I was Toto Wolff right now, there's only one name that I would be thinking of and picking up that phone to dial: Sebastian Vettel. I think Vettel is a very big option to come back in, to have 2 more years in a top car that can win with a team around him that will support him. It'll be big 2 years, the big goodbye. And if you can be world champion again, you can be world champion for a 5th time. I have got this very weird feeling that Sebastian Vettel might just be the first option to be in that car. And I've just got it would work.
I don't see Vettel pulling a Schumacher and coming out of retirement after a couple of years away. Or I see him more as his longtime Red Bull teammate, Mark Webber. You're going to ride off into the sunset and then just be done and never even consider coming back. And I'm not to say Toto might not give him a call, but I would love to see Vettel back in a race seat like that. But I just don't think that's necessarily going to be in the cards here. It's tough because there's more than 3 that I want to say. Selfishly, Nico Hulkenberg is still looking for that podium. I think Mercedes could get him that, but I don't think that's necessarily the most realistic option here. I know we talked about Mick Schumacher a little bit earlier on the show. I think he would maybe be my number 1 shortlist pick just because of a relationship that his family has had with Mercedes for a long time, but now Mick in particular as well. I'm just trying to think. There's so many different names you could list off here. I guess Fernando Alonso has to be up there as well. I know I made the joke in our group chat that Mercedes should promote this junior driver from their customer team who seems to show a lot of potential and a lot of talent. But, again, Alonso's going to be pushing 45 when that time comes around. I don't know how many more years he has left, but he seems to have defied the odds and beaten Father Time so far with how strong he looked with Aston Martin at the start of the year. So he was probably going to be on your short list. And then one name that Karun Shandok actually threw out that has, as recently as an hour or so before we went on the air, been posting some cryptic memes on Instagram. I don't know if he still has his number on speed dial, but I would keep an eye on Valtteri Bottas. You know, it's crazier things have happened. I think there might still be a relationship there. He knows the team very well. And I know he's not a superstar of Formula One, but he's good enough to win you a couple races here or there. I think if they wanted to give George Russell priority and be the number one driver, try to make him a world champion, there's not going to be a better number two driver on the market than Valtteri Bottas. I think he's a one to keep an eye on potentially as well.
Do you remember Shakir? They literally they knocked 7 bells out of each other.
It was one race, Josh. That's the smallest possible sample size.
In one race, we had Bottas take pole with Russell alongside. They barged into each other at turn 1. Russell got the lead and scampered off into the distance.
That's one race. That's a one race sample size, Josh.
All right. How about just 3 races later when Russell kamikazed into the side of him and punched him in the face at Imola? And saying, like, what is he doing and all that lot. If them two are teammates together, it is literally going to be just, I don't know, I can't explain it. It is going to be like watching the opening 10 minutes of Saving Private Ryan on repeat. They would be knocking 10 bells out of each other every single lap.
Josh, that's going to be ancient history come 25. I mean, Kobe might appreciate this basketball reference. Chris Paul is a Golden State Warrior. Did you ever think he and Draymond Green would be teammates? I mean, crazy. I mean, this is the world of sports, right?
Never.
Things change very, very quickly. I think. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying he's on the short list.
I'd like it.
Look at him as an option, and I think if you're looking for somebody who's going to accept a number 2 driver role, I mean, you know, maybe Checo Perez would be in that conversation as well. But I think after his Red Bull stint, he might just want to ride off into the sunset as well. I don't know, but he wants to go do that at Mercedes again and play second fiddle to George Russell. But give Valtteri a call, see what happens.
My brain's melting about the fact that you're seriously saying that Valtteri is going to accept being number 2 to the driver who replaced him at the team, who literally kicked him out of Mercedes. If that happens, then Formula One is just mad. I want that to happen now.
I'm not saying he'd be happy about it. I'm just saying. I'm saying I think he would accept it, and I think it would lead to. I mean. Would you rather be at Mercedes right now or stake F1 team kick Sauber, whatever the heck?
I'd rather be at Sauber with an option to stick around, play the long game, and be at Audi alongside Sainz. That's a good lineup.
I disagree with that. I'd rather be at a top team and maybe be able to sneak a win out once or twice a year. But
do Mercedes want a driver who can win once or twice a year, or do they want a driver who can win the world championships? Valtteri couldn't do that. I mean. I don't know. I know what you mean about number 1 driver. But I think right now they've had that problem where it worked when Hamilton had Bottas because Hamilton was the champion. It worked together. Every time they put 2 equally good drivers against each other, it never works. Hamilton and Rosberg, it kept disintegrating. There's a reason Hamilton says Bottas is his best teammate. I know what you mean, but it's like I don't see these two working together. Because they keep locking horns. But at the same time, I'm remembering how exciting that Shakir race was. I really want to see them as teammates.
That's my point, Josh, that I'm trying to make. But when Mercedes have 2 drivers that are competing against, I mean, Hamilton and Rosberg were childhood karting friends, and then they get into the Mercedes together, and you know they build the team up in 2013, and then 14 through 16 they're fighting it's a 2-car world championship battle, and it ruined their relationship, and it was actually quite sad to see. I don't know, but it quite got as heated as a center and Prost thing. We having the cap thrown and everything. I think they certainly weren't on each other's Christmas card lists, and I hope that it didn't completely permanently damage
it's fine
their relationship that they have. But I think that when you look at Bottas coming in after Rosberg retired, he clearly was never going to beat Lewis over the course of a full season. I don't know, but he would do the same for George Russell. They might not get on quite as well, but I think for Mercedes' sake, you're not going to have those two going up against each other for a world championship. George Russell's clearly going to be the number 1. I don't know. I'm just saying he's on the short list to me. That's all I'm saying here.
Yeah, I agree. I think Isha's that was more going to happen there than Valtteri coming back. Although I've said Vettel. We've all had wild picks. I like it. I love this show. I love it.
Yeah, 2 straight nights in a row doing a marathon show. Last night was Andretti been tonight. Formula One tonight is Lewis Hamilton leaving Mercedes for Ferrari. So 2 nights in a row where we've been very busy here at Grid Network. And that was a very intriguing discussion between you Josh, and Ben. Brought up some interesting points there. And Ed Hunter says that Valtteri is a pretty chill guy, just very, very practical. And he also says Ben is right, Botas supremacy. And he said he only punched Botas because he wanted his seat. Yeah, and Josh, I actually forgot about what happened at Imola until you mentioned. I had to dust off the cobwebs, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember they came together, and then that did happen. When you said he punched him in the face, I'm like, wait, I don't remember that. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that now. And Ed says that Vettel is kind of doing the Nico Rosberg approach, quick, race cold turkey, focus on the family environment, good for him. And
no, is that real? Autosport. No.
And Ben is showing something on the screen. Which, yeah, go full screen there.
Valtteri Bottas at Brackley. No. Is he toying with us?
I'm just saying.
Well,
it could be nothing, could be something. We'll see.
Yeah, it could be Valtteri, just trolling us all. Because we've seen Valtteri troll people in the past, so it would not surprise me if he's just trolling. But who knows? We've seen stranger things happen.
Well, this was the tweet that I referenced that he sent out about 40 minutes before we went on the air here. So, I mean,
yeah, I'm just trying to find out where he is.
Look, I know he's a character on social media, but maybe there's nothing there. Maybe he's just having fun. Maybe he's teasing us with
the date. Yeah. That was the 31st of January. And who's he tagged in it? Paul Southgate. Oh.
Yeah. Very high tech. Yeah.
Maybe he's just toying with us.
I've just remembered Lewis only told Toto last night, which was the 31st of January or whatever it was. And oh my god. We heard rumors that there's a driver there tomorrow. If Valtteri's already been in and signed it, oh my, no. Oh, right, get ready to do another grid tonight, tomorrow.
I don't know if I could do 3 days in a row, Josh. And tonight's show's been a lot longer than last night's, and I was beat after last night's show.
You should call Jackson. We'll do after tonight.
Well, Josh, in complete fairness to you with the debate that we just had, I don't think I would have put Valtteri on the list if I hadn't seen those posts before we came out of the air. But
okay, I was thinking about him.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Oh, no.
Yeah, and Edward Hunter was saying there, a screen of a screen is quality content. And the day in the life said, too bad we don't have an 11 team in F1 for Mick. Yeah, that could have been an 11 team calling Andretti, but F1 had, other plans there. So that's a story for another day, or you can just go back and watch yesterday's show because we spent a whole hour on that. And Mouse Evil says that Schumacher has a 2-year contract with Alpine Endurance till 2026. But as we've seen many times in motorsports, contracts can be broken pretty easily. So if a Formula One opportunity comes up, I don't see Alpine standing in the way and being like, make you have to race in the World Endurance Championship, through the end of your short contract with us. So if Mick Schumacher were to get the call, Alpine's definitely not going to stand in the way there. And he says even Mika after 1999 was supposed to take just a year off there. And you're saying after 2000, sorry, you're all good there. And I guess we don't have any more comments. Guess we'll wrap up this long marathon of a show. It was a wild first day of February, about 1 month away from the season opening Bahrain Grand Prix. Big thank you to Ben, Isha, and Josh for making time to be on the air. We certainly didn't plan this morning at all. It was just all came together last minute. And for our entire Grid Network team behind the scenes for sharing the latest reports as the day went on. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin, Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew. You can invest in Grid Network by clicking on the link in the video description or do a one-time investment through Buy Me a Coffee or YouTube Super Chat. Thanks to Leonardo and Jason for the coffee and Super Chat during the Rolex 24 pre-race. And be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our future shows. We have Grid Live pre-race and wrap-up this weekend for the Busch Light Clash. Grid tonight, Wednesday, Women in Motorsport, plus pick a winner and highlight videos. For Josh, Isha, and Ben, I'm Kobe. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching our special breaking news program. Have a wonderful night.